Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 62, coming at you on this beautiful Friday afternoon. A little bit late in the week for the pod, but your boy has had a lot of things going on. And to be honest, wanted to talk about the technical last season of The Ultimate Fighter, get this week's Dana White Contender Series in. So we got loaded MMA action for you guys on this weekly podcast, streaming anywhere you get podcasts with videos on YouTube. And this week we got a ton of fights that have been announced. We have The Ultimate Fighter episodes 11 and 12 recap, Dana White Contender Series episodes 1 and 2. We had the recap of PFL and a preview of this weekend's PFL happening this evening. And then in the grappling world, we had the CJI, and ADCC events. We're recapping UFC 305 and previewing the Fight Night card this Saturday, UFC Vegas 96. So again, one hell of a loaded show on this Friday before the weekend. So let's jump right in. We have Waldo Cortez Acosta booked against Chris Barnett for October 12th on that Fight Night card, which, to be honest, I'm just excited to have Chris Barnett back in the octagon. We have Ludovic Klein and Nicholas Moda on September 28th. Tresean Gore taking on Antonio Tricoli November 9th. Also in November, we have the headliner Aaron Blanchfield and Rose Namajunas. Excited to see Thug Rose back in the octagon. Also on that November 2nd card, we were supposed to have Derek Lewis taking on Alexander Romanov, but they did a little late-minute switch. We have Derek Lewis taking the up-and-coming kickboxing stud, Janata Deniz, and we have Alexander Romanov taking on Rodrigo Nascimento, so a massive jump up for Deniz. We have Ariana Da Silva taking on Jasmine Jasdavicius, November 2nd. That entire Canadian card getting built out. Also including Marc-Andre Barriol and Dustin Stoltzfus in one fun veteran showdown. Chad Anilger taking on Cody Gibson from The Ultimate Fighter. Kyle Machado taking on Bredson Ribeiro. And then heading into December, we have Dustin Jacoby and Vitor Petrino. Pretty excited for that matchup. And then we have a rematch between Amanda Ribas and Mackenzie Dern. And then for UFC 307, we have Alex Pereira in a surprise announcement against Khalil Roundtree Jr., UFC 307. And for me, I was a little shocked when they announced Magomed Ankalaev against Alexander Rakic, which made you wonder what they had in store for Pereira. Is he going to wait? He's been so active. But insert Khalil Roundtree Jr. Yes, Khalil has skipped the line. He lost out on the Jamal Hill fight because he popped for supposedly a tainted substance, or he was getting substances that he didn't know he was. On the Joe Rogan podcast, he talked about not knowing, and supposedly the substance shouldn't really be illegal. It's not giving him any performance-enhancing ability. But regardless, he's skipping the line. For me, as a true MMA fight fan, I'm a little bummed. I feel for Ankalaev. I think he's more than deserved the title shot. If I try to put my head into where the brass is with the UFC here of why are they treating Ankalaev the way they are? Maybe because he had an interim title shot and they came to a draw. But I thought it was a high quality IQ fight, tit for tat fight. They put it all on the line. Ankalaev has done nothing but, show up and show out in the UFC. So a little bit of a head scratcher, but this fight is absolute violence. The Muay Thai and kicking ability of Khalil Roundtree, both these guys, no wrestling, no grappling. They're going to go for it and leave it out there, and it should deliver for one hell of a show. Also for UFC 307, we have Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena. Juliana Pena finally back in the title mix. And just as much as people are upset about Khalil Roundtree, Pena's been out for quite some time, and she's getting a title shot. It is what it is sometimes. We get some new blood. We have the veteran Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Joaquin Buckley at UFC 307. Was shocked that Stephen Thompson signed on the bottom line against a very up-and-coming Buckley who's becoming well-rounded and may even showcase some more grappling in this fight. We have Roman Dolidze and Kevin Holland also scrapping. And then at UFC 309, we have Karine Silva and Viviane Araujo. So quite the week for announced fights. Canada getting built out November 12th. And then UFC 307, the main card, getting built out as well. Elsewhere in UFC news, Charles Air Jourdain is going to move down to the bantamweight division, which in his last fight, I talked about how he looks just like the smaller fighter. I'm curious if he could make that happen. I think it might benefit him. The bantamweight division is no joke. I think the featherweight division is a little bit lighter in the depth department, but really interested to see how this plays out for Charles Jourdain's career. I don't even think he's in his prime yet. Maybe he is. He is 28 years old, so not even in his prime. This could be a power move by him. We also have Damon Jackson moving up to the lightweight division. So two guys changing divisions. And this Friday, or today, we also have the road to the UFC semifinals. I won't break it down now. We'll wait till the finals to see what winner's going to have a chance at UFC contracts. And I'm assuming they will do the final fights for the road to the UFC on the China card, which I can't remember if that's late this year or early next year. But regardless, we are coming to a conclusion this weekend from The Ultimate Fighter. I know that Dana White Contender Series is the hot new thing, but I love The Ultimate Fighter, the reality aspect of a bunch of, egotistical, high testosterone fighters in a house together. I've been watching for years and years, watched most of the seasons, and I really do enjoy getting to know the fighter stories, who they are, what their backgrounds are. Contender Series gives you a little bit of that, but I've really enjoyed the coaches' challenges, how the coaches are part of it, then they make a fight. I really enjoyed this season. I thought the quality of talent was very high level. It's the most international series and season of Ultimate Fighter of all time. And I do think we will see a lot of these fighters in the UFC. On episode 11, we had the Team Grasso on Grasso Crime, as Robert Valentin had to fight his best friend in the house and his teammate Patty McCory. And when this was announced that this would be the semifinal matchup, I'm thinking man, Patty looked good, but is he going to be able to handle the savageness of Robert Valentin, who's kind of the guy that's been helping corner his team, mentor and coach the team. But when the fight happened, Patty actually showed up and showed out, man. He was taking control of the fight, outstriking Robert, which was a little bit surprising to me, until Robert got a head and arm throw, locked in the legs, and got a choke finish. And a lot of this was just because Patty was really over-aggressive when he was really in total control of the distance, control of the flow of the fight. And even afterwards, Robert let him know, hey, you got a little eager there. I took advantage, because that's how good of friends they are. But he now is going to fight Valentina's Ryan Loder in the finals this weekend. Also in the episode, Valentina took her team shooting. Her nickname is the Bullet. She shoots guns a lot, and her skill was on full display. We also got to see some of her other team members do really well as their special forces or ex-army or military guys. But the drama this week was the concern that Valentina's stud, Zigomatis Ramasca, might not be cleared to fight. He has a cheekbone fracture that they're worried about. The past few weeks, it made it seem like they were leaning towards him fighting. And then also to come out in the news is that Valentina's fighter who looked solid, Nathan Fletcher, had been fighting and training in the house for multiple weeks with a fractured left fibula. And even the doctor was like, oh my God, what is happening? This guy is still training MMA with a fractured left fibula. And how he's able to manage that pain and do what he's doing is pretty insane. So lots of injury stuff. That's part of also the Ultimate Fighter. where you're fighting so many back-to-back fights. You got to try to get through a fight unscathed, come up with a good game plan. It really is a whole nother battleground of strategy, willpower, durability to try to get to the UFC. And that's why I do think a lot of the Ultimate Fighters do fairly well in the UFC. Moving on to episode 12, we had the news break of Team Shevchenko's Zigomatis Ramaska being ruled out of the semifinal. I was super bummed. I really wanted to see him take on Myron Santos. So they brought in Guillermo Torres, who was also Team Grasso. Not sure how they came to that conclusion. They also had the guy that had the drinking problem on Shevchenko's team available. Maybe you'd want to not have teammates fight. But again, that guy probably doesn't deserve it. He acted a fool. Regardless, in the fight, Santos really took it to the older and more experienced Torres. Although this went to a decision, Torres used his length very well, showcased his striking and power, and Guillermo, Olympic wrestler from Mexico, did get some takedowns, but this was all Santos in this fight. So now he gets to fight another teammate and Khan Offley in the featherweight finale this weekend. I'm probably favoring Khan. He's really showed out. I thought he had tough competition and really did his thing. But Myron Santos looking like the real deal. Really bummed Zigomatis is out. But that wraps up the end of The Ultimate Fighter with the finale fights happening this weekend. So, let's move into Dana White Contender Series. Everyone is hyped on the Contender Series. People are betting on it. People are on social media making blogs of the fighters and their backgrounds as prospects. This has become the hottest ticket outside of actual UFC pay-per-view events. And recapping it, we had Mansour Abdul Malik defeating Wes Schultz by TKO. Basically a bunch of ground and pound and some elbows in round 2. Mansour Abdul is an absolute freight train of a man. He earns a UFC contract, looks to be like a guy that can definitely have some fun in the UFC. We had Rami Hamed defeating Ding Meng by unanimous decision, but neither fighter was super aggressive in the fight, and Rami did not earn a contract. I'm not too surprised by that. Then we had Bruno Lopez defeating Mikhail Sazanani by TKO. It was a body shot in round 2. He was able to earn a contract. This was a second Dana White Contender Series opportunity. Although he didn't, really show out, he did enough, and Dana White gave him an opportunity. Then we had some MMA lab products local here in the Phoenix area. Holy shit, did this guy put on a display and is going to be a problem in the featherweight division. We have Jose Delgado defeating Ernie Juarez by knockout in round 2 and earning a contract. Again, an MMA lab product, trains with a bunch of studs and killers at the bantamweight and featherweight division at the MMA lab. He also took this fight on short notice. I cannot wait to see what he does in the UFC. We had Loner Kavanaugh defeating MMA Lab's Antoine Ho by a vicious round 1 knockout and earning a contract. I assume they'll be booking him in one of these fight night cards fairly shortly. But this had a lot of violence, a lot of hype. What a fantastic opening episode. Dana White cannot ask for much better, especially with Loner Kavanaugh getting that knockout early. Well-earned contracts and a great way to start the season. Was bummed to see Ho, who looked to be pretty solid and a quality flyweight talent, get knocked out like that. I'm sure he will be back. He's still young. Plenty of time for the young lad. Going into Contender Series Episode 2, we had 4 more contracts awarded. I would not say this was as explosive of an episode and as great of fights as we saw in Episode 1. And the bantamweight division, we had Andreas Gustafsson. At middleweight, we had Cody Hayden, who I thought was the most impressive in his performance against a very tough Billy Brand. We had Rizvan Kuniev at heavyweight, Cortavius Ramius at bantamweight, which is this guy that's really come from rags to riches. Didn't show the highest of IQs, but Dana White called him one of the best athletes he's ever seen. very high praise, so he's given him a chance. It'll be interesting to see how that works. We also, again, I think Cody Hayden was the most impressive in week 2. So excited to see how the Dana White Contender Series continues. There is Red Hawk Academy's very own Montana Great Falls 3-time state wrestling champion, Tommy, what the heck is his name? I'm blanking on his name now. I talked to him at the gym. Tommy what? They call him Tommy Gunn. That's his nickname. Let's see if I could find his...
No one shows up.
What his last name is. Tommy McMillan fighting in a couple of weeks, so really excited to see that. But some well-awarded contracts. There's a couple of these that I'm like, The big story in episode 2 also was having Tori Finniz, the short little just brick shit house, winning another fight but not getting a contract. There's a lot of drama around that. But there's a new cream of the crop coming into the UFC. I did think there has been some really quality talent through the first 2 episodes and plenty more to come. Heading into the third string, UFL of the UFC, we had the PFL playoffs continuing. Last weekend we had the light heavyweights and lightweights going at it. We had Impa Kasanganay with a unanimous decision over Joshua Silveira. Decent performance by Impa. Rob Wilkinson with a unanimous decision over Dovlidzhan Yagshimuradov. Decent decision there. Another decision, Brett Primus wrestling out a unanimous decision against Clay Collard. Then we had Danny Sabatello with a majority decision over Lazaro Dyron, and Mads Burnell with a unanimous decision over Elvin Espinoza. All decisions. Again, the production of this, the quality, it's just not there. They have a long ways to go. But this weekend, let's see if they can step it up a notch. They have the welterweights and featherweights, the final of the playoffs before the finale that's not scheduled, or the championships. We have the prelims at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN+, the main card at 7 p.m. Pacific on ESPN, the local network. And PFL is one of their biggest names. Brendan Loughnane is taking on the young Extreme Couture stud Kai Kamaka III. We have Magomed Umalatov taking on Neiman Gracie. I would expect Brendan to, he's been through this a few times. I think he's going to get the dub. Umalatov should here. Gracie, he's a Gracie, doesn't have the best striking. Good jiu-jitsu. Let's see if there's any grappling that comes into play. I'm excited for the Gabriel Braga Timur Kizriev fight. I watched Timur in my one and only Bellator show in Tacoma, Washington, and I think he's going to get the dub. We have the rematch of Shamil Musayev and Murad Ramazanov. I think Shamil stays undefeated. And then we have Makhmed Berkamov and Ray Cooper III, as well as Tyler Diamond and Enrique Barzola. So some quality fights this weekend for the PFL. Let's see if they can put on a better, production and just performance by these fighters, because past weekend was a little rough. And speaking of this upcoming weekend, I'm going to Journey, Def Leppard, and Steve Miller Band at the Arizona Diamondback Stadium. Fun little summer concert with my girlfriend, so super hyped about that. But Las Vegas had it going on. They had the CJI and ADCC head-to-head. There's lots of grumblings about the grappling pay that the ADCC gives, $10,000. So Craig Jones put 2 tournaments together and said the winner gets $1 million. So we had Nicky Rod taking the bigger weight class and Cade Rutolo in the lower class, $1 million winners. And Nicky Rod cruised through the division, tapping everyone out. He called that Gordon Ryan, said, "I'll put my $1 million on the line for a rematch." We had Cade with the big win, tapping out Jason Nolf, the ex-Penn State wrestler, collegiate stud, with a knee bar. We had Levi Jones-Leary defeating Ty Rutolo, Cade's brother, via decision, but he lost to his older brother, Cade. And then in the superstar fights, we had Craig Jones tapping out Gabby Garcia, Fionn Davies dominating UFC strawweight Mackenzie Dern via a win with the armbar, which is super, super high level. Mackenzie Dern's jiu-jitsu is no joke. And some fun matches throughout. There was plenty more, but some that I caught. We had Pat Downey dominating Luke Rockhold, and Adam Bradley defeating Pat Downey via split decision. I thought the CJI was very fun, free on YouTube. Lots of eyes there, lots of fun mixed matches, a lot of BJJ versus wrestling. I'm excited to see what the future of that holds. And then ADCC, we had Mika Galvo with the 77 kilogram gold. Nicky Rod's younger brother, Jay Rodriguez, with a silver. Felipe Pena with the 99 kilogram gold. Daniel Manasui surprisingly getting bronze. And then in the super fight, we had Gordon Ryan defeating Felipe Pena in a rematch. It went to extra time, but now it's 2-2 overall. And then Gordon Ryan on Sunday defeated Yuri Simoes. So, yeah, a lot happening there. Very, very impressed by the showcases. I did not watch ADCC because you have to go through a paywall. I did see some clips. Was all about CJI. I'm hoping that somehow these two can figure something out and get the best of the best against the best of the best. Regardless, all that MMA action, PFL Tough Contender Series will keep continuing. Well, Tough, not so much because it's done. We have the grappling events done. But we had UFC 305. I went 8-4 on my picks. I thought I was going to do a lot better the way the evening started. But overall, I'm at 379 wins, 189 losses, 7 no contests and draws. And on the year, I'm at 186, 103, and 4. So if I could recap the card, I would say the prelims overall were kind of meh. You know, there were some lackluster performances. But I thought, especially some of the favored fighters, I don't feel like they really went after it. But Casey O'Neill definitely stole the show with her bounce-back win and victory celebration. As a fellow Aussie, she was joking on, I think it was Reagan, the viral breakdancer, woman breakdancer from Australia. That went viral. That was hilarious. In the main card, I thought it was an absolute blast. There were some wars, some finishes, a little bit of everything for whatever style of action you like. And Australia struggled overall. You know, they went 5-5, but technically I guess you should say 4-6 because Steve Erceg is the true Australian and Kai Kara-France isn't. But the Australia fans showed out. I thought it was a fun weekend. I give it a 7 out of 10 overall on recapping the card. Some good fights we did not break down. We had Jesus Aguilar with a round 1 submission via guillotine choke over Stuart Nicol. So good performance by him. But we'll kick it off in the prelims. Australia getting off to a good start. We had Jack Jenkins with a round 3 TKO over Herbert Burns. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. This was a chaotic mess. Jack definitely dominated the striking. Although early at the beginning of the fight in the first round, Herbert was using his length well, firing a nice jab away. But he stopped doing that as the fight went on. He tried to just live on the jab, and that wasn't going to be enough as Jack started coming in with combinations and closing the distance. But Herbert did get a takedown in round 1. And, Jack was kind of playing in his guard, playing his game. I'd like to see him just stand up and go for the finish. In round 2, he wasn't able to do much with the takedowns. And as the fight went on, Jack knocked Herbert down. You know, Herbert was getting worn out. And Burns tried to welcome him back into his guard. And Jack continued to play the game a few times for whatever reason. I don't know what he's trying to do there. Again, I think he should have just made him stand up. He probably would have been able to put him away early in the fight for sure, earlier in round 3. But he finally did get it in round 3. And I just thought, maybe it's because Jack hurt his shoulder or elbow or whatever and is wanting to get some ring time. It just didn't seem like he showed off a very high IQ. There was a lot of different strategies I thought he could have taken advantage of. If Herbert's just going to throw the jab, go in there with bigger combinations, you're landing them. Again, you knock the guy down early, let him get up, make him force you to play your game and close that distance. I just thought he was in hypothetical terms, playing with his food too much. But meanwhile, Herbert had no submission attempts, so although he played in his guard, I guess you got to give him credit there. And that was really Herbert's only chance. So Australia starting the day off well. Statistically, Jack landed 98 total strikes, 73 of them significant. He had 2 minutes and 44 seconds of control time with the 2 knockdowns. Herbert landed 45 total and 24 significant strikes. He only had 2 takedowns and 9 attempts, so did not have a lot of success. A lot of those were very lackluster attempts. So you got to credit Jack for the defense there. And Herbert had a minute and 54 seconds of control time. So Jack starts a new winning streak. He moves to 4-1 in the UFC since 2022. And Herbert extends his losing streak to 4. He hasn't won since June of 2020. So what's next? I would love to see Jack take on a guy like Julio Arce. And I just don't think Herbert will be with the UFC anymore. Maybe because he's Gilbert's brother and his jiu-jitsu ability, he will still have some life. If he does, I think a match with Sungwoo Choi would make sense. Casey O'Neill absolutely keeping the Australia love going with the unanimous decision over Luana Santos. I tried to tell y'all, man, this was a good underdog bout that I saw coming. I was pretty confident in it, but I was confident in some other dogs that didn't go that way. But this was really the moment that Casey reminded the fan base. I feel like fighters that have one bad fight, you only fight once in like 15, 16 months, people forget, they just assume you suck. But Luana really hasn't fought the quality of competition. She reminded people what she's capable of. She stopped the hype train that Santos was bringing, and it was just a lopsided fight. Casey just bullied Luana for 3 rounds. She defended Luana's grappling attempts. She continued to move forward and have Luana on skates. You know, as she was up against the cage in the black circle, she was circling the entire fight, trying to dip, dodge, and dive. But Casey's power was on display as her shots had a ton more on them when they were delivered than Santos was able to bring back. The stats showcase this. Casey landed 113 total strikes, 83 of which were significant, a submission attempt, and 2 minutes and 21 seconds of control time. She went 0 for 2 in her takedown attempts. And Luana landed 46 total strikes, so almost a third, and 41 significant strikes. She only had 1 takedown and 5 attempts, so wasn't having success there. And she also had 2 minutes and 21 seconds of control time. So Casey ends her 2-fight losing streak. She starts a new winning streak. She is an even 2-2 since 2022. And Luana ends her 5-fight losing streak, winning streak, and she starts a new losing streak. She is now 3-1 in the UFC. So what's next for these ladies? I think Casey and Veronica Hardy would be a fantastic matchup. That does make a ton of sense where they're at right now. And for Luana, she can fight the veteran J.J. Aldrich. Moving on in another prelim fight, I tried to tell y'all, even though this should not have happened, we had Ricardo Ramos with a split decision victory over Josh Kulabau. And when I said this card was a little bit of a chaotic mess, the prelims were just sloppy IQ. Sometimes you just gotta wonder, these athletes and fighters, they're fighting for a reason. But you want to talk about finding a way to lose a fight. Rewatch this fight back. That's exactly what Josh Kulabau did. He absolutely destroyed Ricardo's leg. Ricardo has a wide stance. He's very bouncy, very quick, has solid power, and he lives off that leg to sprout. He does a lot of spinning techniques, and Josh had a good game plan. His team prepped him. Let's destroy that leg. He did so. Powerful calf kicks right out the gate. Ricardo clearly, you could look at him as his opponent, could not put any weight on that leg probably after 2 minutes. You know, again, he lives off lunging with his strikes, closing distance, spinning, using his athletic ability to deliver those unique strikes and combos, and he was going to be in a terrible spot. So if Josh continued to attack the leg, you would think he could have got a round 1 leg TKO finish, because if you can't get up, they will call the fight. Well, midway through round 1, Ricardo got very, very lucky. I think Josh slipped. I'm not too sure what happened, But as he went down, Ricardo was able to get his back, was able to somehow just, some of these grapplers and fighters are so quick and smooth, just somehow able to find that back as a guy falls down, gets in that transition, sunk in an absolutely deep rear naked choke with like a minute and a half or more. But the way he was angled, probably because he didn't have that clean back take, his rear naked choke wasn't in the elbow. The neck wasn't here. It was more on like kind of the side. He had it so deep though, and Josh was so tired. It seemed like, damn near 2 minutes of trying to defend that, which is not a place you want to be. Have someone put you in a rear naked choke. See if you could last like 30 seconds as deep as he had it. But somehow he was able to fight it off with that slight angle. He wasn't going to give up. The guy is a dog. We can't doubt Josh's ability there. But he was able to make it to round 2. Very shocking. So then you're like, well, even as he's seeking in that rear naked choke, if Ramos doesn't finish this, there's no way he's going to be able to stand on that leg. If it does go to round 2, Josh is going to attack, right? Well, he did land a few calf kicks. He knocked Ricardo down because Ricardo couldn't stand. His leg was completely chop suey. But he was kind of dumb about it. He didn't make Ricardo stand back up. He didn't continue to kick the leg while they're down. Because if they're going to play that game, they're down, they could up kick you, but you have distance. You could come in there and smoke that leg from distance if you're going to play that game. You didn't force him to stand up, let him live through the round. So it is what it is. And somehow Ricardo was able to live through the round and clearly won the round. These guys are completely gassed at this point. Ricardo's leg is absolutely done. In round 3, Ricardo actually came out the gates the aggressor. I'm assuming he knew how bad his leg was, and he just said, I had to come forward and bite the bullet to figure it out. Because Josh was pretty tired. And if Josh had enough space to kick the leg, Ricardo was going to be doomed. So he's like, I'm just going to be a man in close distance and live or die by the sword, I guess. But he somehow hobbled his way to land big shots on Josh. Ricardo even got his own takedown, which won him the round. And I'm assuming they gave him rounds 2 and 3. Or rounds 1 and 3 after that rear naked choke. So somehow got a very, very close split decision victory. I wouldn't have been surprised because Josh won round 2. That, they could have gave Josh round 1 just based off the leg kick damage. They also could have very, very close made this a unanimous decision, but they didn't. So I wasn't upset Ramos lost. I had bet on him. But logically, my mind was just blown the entire fight. I was like yelling at the screen with my friend. It's just not a lot of surprise because Josh had too many chances, right? He could have finished the fight. He was pretty gassed by round 3, but he could have finished it in round 1, in my opinion. Although the slip, that's bad luck, I guess. But in round 2 as well. I don't know. It just, he had a clear path to victory around 3. Maybe you're like, he's too gassed to think of it. You heard his coaches. They were trying to help him out. Just a crazy, crazy situation. But I got my pick right. Now, statistically, Josh landed 92 total strikes, 70 of them significant with a knockdown, and a minute and a half of control time. And Ricardo only landed 39 total strikes, so quite a bit less, 27 of them significant. So Ricardo had 27 significant, Josh 70. Josh had 92 total, Ricardo 39 total. Not very many times you win like that. But Ricardo had that deep submission attempt, a takedown, and 4 minutes and 9 seconds of control time. So almost a full round. Ricardo ends his 2-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak. He's back to 2-2 in the UFC. Potentially saved his life in the UFC. And Josh extends his losing streak to 3. 2-3 since 2022. Again, with so many paths to victory there, you're on a 2-fight losing streak. You would think you would just calm down a little bit, think of what's ahead of you, and continue to beat that leg down to victory. But although Ricardo won, I don't think this really was a big boost to his stock. So I think a fight with Doo Ho Choi is the one to make. And stylistically, that would be an absolute blast. And for Josh, he could bang it out with the veteran Daniel Pineda. Moving on, the final fight in the prelims, we had Walter Walker with a round 1 submission via heel hook over Junior Tafa. And this fight didn't go very far, Walter came in with a clear game plan, and a lot of heavyweights' game plan against the Taffa brothers was to get Junior down. And that was smart. Junior didn't really have good defense. He was stuck. Then when Walter went in for a heel hook, they kind of transitioned over, and maybe it was already in pain, or I'm not too sure exactly what the situation is, but he screamed really loud in like agony. And for the judges, apparently the rule is that qualifies as a verbal tap, even though he didn't actually tap. You know, Taffa at the end was just weird, went and slapped Walter and was talking shit still. I was kind of upset because I picked Junior, but I'm not too sure what was going through his head, if, you know, he would have ended up tapping or not. Kind of a weird situation. There wasn't a lot of clarity there. It didn't go very far, so statistically, Junior only landed 10 total and 5 significant strikes, and Walter landed 20 total and 4 significant. He had 2 takedowns and 3 attempts, a submission attempt, and 3 minutes and 54 seconds of control time. So Walter starts a new winning streak, gets his first UFC win, so he's an even 1-1 in the UFC, and Junior extends his losing streak to 2 and is 1-3 in the UFC since 2023. So what's next? For Walter, I would say a showdown with Jamal Pogues. That would be fun. And for Junior, he could fight for his UFC life against Lucas Bresky. So that was just the verbal tap, like, hey, what happened? How did Josh lose that fight? Dominant performance by Casey O'Neill. And again with Jack, I think he could have found path to victory earlier as well. But that moves us to the main card. We had Carlos Prats with a round 2 knockout over Li Jingliang. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Carlos. And this was a fight I got wrong, but I am not surprised. You know, I was feeling good at this point. With the prelims, somehow Ricardo escaped with the win. I had Casey as an underdog, picked Jack. I did lose the Junior fight, but I'm feeling good, and I'm excited to see Lee back in. And this was just an absolute show out and coming out party for Carlos. Lee tried to hang in there. He took a lot of powerful strikes in round 1, but as the round was ending, you could see where this fight was trending. Something about these guys that can cut weight well enough with the body frame to be a taller fighter for the division, but have that long, lengthy, whippy power and speed, it's just a dangerous thing, man. Sean O'Malley, Corey Sandhagen, Dan Hooker, Alex Caceres type dudes. And, I mean, Carlos just put on a display of how to land on the mark with some serious power. And I don't know how Lee was able to even hang in going into round 2. Because round 2, Carlos had Lee on the cage immediately, was hammering down strikes, continued to rock him, and he finally got the finish. You know, Lee up against the cage in the black circle, he would fire back, not land him much, but everything Carlos landed was a lot faster, on the mark, and Lee was just, you know, he was a punching bag throughout this fight. Brutal to see with the layoff from Lee. But Carlos, man, the fighting nerds are the absolute real deal. Lee landed 41 total and significant strikes. Carlos landing 55 total and significant. And he had 2 knockdowns with the clean knockout. Carlos now extends his winning streak to 10. He's undefeated in the UFC, 4-0. Lee extends his losing streak to 2. He is only 1-2 since 2022. So what's next? Well, for Carlos, he called out Chaos Williams. I love the idea of that fight, so let's make that a scrap. And for Lee, I'm not sure what his future holds after this performance. He had the spine injury, but I do hope we see him again, and I would love to see him in a matchup with the veteran Tim Means. I think that would be a good opportunity for both men. But then we had the big dogs. A fight I got wrong here. We had Jairzinho Rosenstrike with a split decision victory over Tai Tuivasa. And one of the worst split decisions I've ever seen in my life. Immediately everyone was like, how they scored this 10-7. Tai did not win a minute of this fight. The judge should be fired immediately. Well, they actually removed him from judging the rest of the night. That's how bad it was. Round 1, 2 lethal, powerful heavyweights that love to strike. They started out slow. They were very respectful of each other's power. And Jairzinho, more of a counter striker. So Ty kind of being more measured than he usually is and not as aggressive coming forward. It forced a lot of lack of action. But round 2, man, they started to let their hands fly, but Rosenstrike was landing a bunch of combos, 2-3 strikes at a time. And Ty only had some big, powerful leg kicks, which is a good plan. But Biggie Boy would be throwing them first. So Biggie Boy was firing the leg kicks out as well. So tit-for-tat round, Jairzinho winning rounds 1 and 2. And then round 3, Jairzinho was leading the dance, absolutely controlling the center of the octagon, really had Ty where he wanted him. And we didn't see Ty land the big strikes. He threw a lot of big overhands, big Tai Tuivasa-like strikes, but they didn't hit the mark. And he didn't enter with technical shots. It was just those big loopy shots. He didn't bring a lot of volume in the fight, especially when you're down and you're already on a 4-fight losing streak. This is Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. I expected him to be aggressive and find a way, and we did not see that killer instinct in this fight. Credit to Jairzinho and his skilled kickboxing ability. Statistically, Ty only landed 37 total and significant strikes. That's barely, a little over 12 strikes around for a heavyweight. That's kind of crazy. And Jairzinho landed 92 total and 91 significant, so tripled up on the volume. That's exactly why he won the fight. So Biggie Boy extends his winning streak to 2. He is 3-2 since 2022, and he moves up 2 spots in the rankings to number 10. Ty extends his losing streak to 5. He has not won since February of 2022, and he moves down 3 spots in the rankings to number 13. So what's next? I would love to see Sergey take on Sergey Spivak. I think with all the fights being booked, that should be next. And for Ty, I do think this will be a tough decision for the UFC. He is a fan favorite. If he were to fight again, I'd say a scrap with Shamil Gaziev would make sense. But then we had 3 absolute bangers that brought the night home. We had Dan Hooker with a split decision victory over Mateusz Gamrot. Fight of the night, 50 G's for Dan Hangman Hooker. And I'm very happy for Dan. I did not expect him to be able to live with the grappling of Gamrot, because Gamrot has defeated so many in his path, and Dan has been susceptible to that. But what an awesome war this was around. Both men showed out. Again, I was a little surprised that Mateusz was able to hang decently with his striking in this fight, and somehow Dan was able to defend takedowns over and over. When he did get taken down, he was able to get back up and wouldn't let Gamrot just, lay on top of him to steal rounds. Now, if you would think that that was the case, that Dan wouldn't get held down or taken down, that is absolutely a recipe for a Hooker victory. But Gamrot drug him into deep waters and made him dig deep. The pace, the volume that these guys fought at, it was amazing. Gamrot actually probably took round 1. He landed more combinations and flurries of strikes, because for him to close distance for a long, lanky fighter, you kind of got to throw some in to close that distance. And then when he did that, he was able to chain that into takedowns brilliantly. He went 50%. He had 2 takedowns and 4 attempts in round 1. Good showing by Gamrot, but also you're like, oh, maybe Dan has a chance. Well, round 2, Gamrot, of course, went back to the grappling well. He did get some takedowns, but Dan got up, was able to land big shots, was able to keep striking from distance and using his length advantage to keep Gamrot at distance to win round 1, which had us 1-1, all or nothing round 3. They're both beaten up and bloodied. The volume and pace that these guys have put on, bonkers. Well, round 3, Dan was able to land the bigger shots, which I really think got the job done to steal this fight. And to be honest, I think this was the best performance of Dan Hooker's UFC career. He's in his prime right now. He showcased everything that you want to see in a potential champion. The grit, the determination, the skill, and the ability to find a way against a guy who is known for doing that against his opponents. Really, he outdogged a dog. Statistically, Dan landed 82 total strikes, 65 of them significant. He had 1 minute and 38 seconds of control time. And Gamrot landed 88 total, so 6 more strikes, 64 of them significant, so one less significant. To be honest, a lot of those combos coming in, I would not give that many significant to Gamrot. Again, that's why the judges gave it to Dan. But Gamrot had 5 takedowns, although 15 attempts. So in a 15-minute fight, you have a guy that's such a good grappler. To defend 15 takedowns is exhausting, let alone throwing 82 strikes the other way. Again, credit to the Hangman. And then Gamrot also had 4 minutes and 59 seconds of control time. City Kickboxing talked about having new conditioning coming into this, and boy, did it show off. Again, 15 takedown attempts. You've been controlled for an entire round. You're getting your ass back up. You're throwing shots away. Damn, bravo, Dan Hooker. Dan now extends his winning streak to 3. He is 3-1 since 2022. He moves up 6 spots in the rankings to number 5. And Mateusz ends his 3-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. He is 4-2 since 2022. And he moves down 3 spots in the rankings to number 8. Brutal loss for Gamrot, especially taking the lot lower ranked fighter. But not a lot of people want to fight Gamrot, and Gamrot has defeated a lot of the guys on the path to a title opportunity. So what's next? There's been a lot of rumblings of who could be next for Dan Hooker. I want to see violence. I want to see Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje. That would be absolutely bonkers. And for Gamrot, he could fight the winner of the Benoit Saint-Denis fight, who takes on Renato Moicano. I wouldn't be upset if he fought Paddy Pimblett either, but I highly doubt they give Paddy Pimblett an opponent like that. Regardless, again, an absolute fight of the night. Absolute fucking highlight. Then we had the flyweights, and I thought this was going to be fight of the night. I could not wait for this showdown. 2 guys who love to scrap, high volume, and flyweights volume is a little bit different. But boy, Kai Kara France showed that power with a round 1 knockout over Steve Erceg. 50 G's for Kai Kara. Now, as expected, both men came out very aggressive, but we didn't really get to see how this would play out. We didn't get to see Steve initiating the grappling exchanges, which I thought would come, because as Steve was pressuring Kai gave him a test of that beautiful, powerful left hand that he has, and once he landed, he pounced on Steve for the finish and got an early finish. It only took Kai 18 total insignificant strikes. He did get 2 knockdowns, and Steve only landed 9 total and significant strikes. And to have power like Kai has in his left hand in the flyweight division just gives you a whole nother advantage, because not a lot of people are finishers like Kara France in that division. So Kai ends his 2-fight losing streak. He starts a new winning streak. He is 2-2 since 2022. He stays at number 4 in the rankings. And this is another fight I got right, that most of the masses were taking Steve Erceg. He's the new flashy toy. A lot of people, what have you done for me lately? But Steve extends his losing streak to 2. He is 3-2 since 2022, and he moves down 1 spot in the rankings to number 8. So what's next? Well, I do think Amir Albazi should be healthy soon. I really do think he is more deserving for the title than Kai Kara France, but I would not be shocked at all if that performance, the UFC gifts Kai a title shot, especially a guy that likes to finish, and that would be a rematch from the Ultimate Fighter where Alexandre Pantoja defeated Kai Kara France. And for Steve, he should take some time to go to the work at the gym. He's coming to the UFC, made a big name for himself, took a lot of the top competition. I think he doesn't need to be rushed back, but I think a fight against Alex Perez would be a great next step for him. I wouldn't mind him fighting Manel Kape either, but you can never trust Manel Kape to make fights happen, and I give him no credit anymore. And that set us up for the main event, the Battle of Africa. We had Dricus du Plessis with a round 4 submission via rear naked choke over Israel Adesanya. And this was great because I had rounds 3 and 4 prop bets in for DDP, so I won a nice $350 on that. But this fight was exactly how you'd expect it to play out. Man, I thought Izzy looked really good early in the fight, and better than I thought he would. I thought DDP would actually be a little bit more offensive, because round 1, DDP was rushing in to close distance, and he was whiffing on a bunch of strikes. Not very technical. You know, a lot of people show the highlights of him kind of head down, balling his way in. He would land some, but not super flesh. And Izzy was landing big kicks, nice straight technical strikes. Plus, he was able to defend the takedown attempt. I just thought it was a very close round in round one, but I did give it to Izzy live. It could have been either way. But I thought, although Izzy had nice power kicks, he wasn't attacking that lead leg, which I expected him to do a lot more with DDP. And usually he does a lot in his fights. You know, he comes from kickboxing. He showed it a lot in the Pereira fights against a lot of the big, powerful strikers. He's attacked that leg. But round two, DDP was more aggressive with his wrestling. And Izzy was able to get back up. He landed more strikes of his own. And to be honest, I thought he landed the more damaging strikes on DDP, which won him the round. I had him going up 2-0 into round three. Now, round three, it was definitely more of a kickboxing showdown. But DDP, he has this weird body language where he looks to be tiring, but he keeps coming. Just the brute force and determination. But Izzy looked like the quicker fighter. He was countering when DDP would come in a little bit recklessly and firing off his own offense, still mixing in some kicks. I gave it Izzy 3-0. Maybe you say DDP gets round one, so worst case scenario 2-1. But if it's up 3-0, I mean, if you drastically lose the last two championship rounds, they may give it to DDP, saying the round one was close enough. But it seemed like Izzy was on his path to winning. But again, not as many leg kicks as I was accustomed to thinking Izzy would bring out. So Izzy's looking great. Backing up all this talk. Round four, Izzy came out hot again. He defended a takedown, was really kind of picking DDP apart from distance because he's a lot quicker of a striker. But then DDP came in with those big brawly strikes, came in with a looping hook that hit Izzy right on the back of the head, kind of dazed him. He was kind of wobbly walking across the back of the cage, and DDP just kept firing more shots, got Izzy rocked to the point that he had an easy takedown. And once he got that takedown, I mean, we're in minute, damn near 20 of a 25-minute fight. The amount of volume, the takedowns that he's defended, and the battling against this brute had really started to show. Because once he got the takedown, it didn't seem like Izzy, maybe because he was rocked, was looking to defend much. DDP was just kind of laying on him. He didn't have good hooks in. It wasn't a clean thing, but he easily took his back, got a rear naked choke, and Izzy tapped out fairly quickly, which was kind of a little head scratching as well. Maybe it was, again, just because he was rocked. Or maybe he's hurt from one of the strikes in the fight. Who knows? Regardless, massive credit to DDP. He continues to find a way. He digs deep. He keeps coming and wears his guys out in the later rounds. And he never deters from his game plan. That's exactly why I picked him, although I hated doing it. But he was constantly pressuring for the most of the night. Izzy was able to be defensive, was landing good counter shots, firing away his own offense and having that speed advantage. And it wore on DDP for sure. It had him rocked, he had him beaten up pretty late in the fight as well. But man, DDP not being the most technical, the most clean-looking fighter, and always looking tired, but he is defeating all of the best fighters in the division. He's out dogging them and continually improving. He did it against one of the best to ever do it in the middleweight division and one of the more technically skilled fighters ever in the UFC. So massive credit to DDP. Statistically, DDP landed 99 total strikes, 90 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns in 9 attempts. So again, for Izzy to keep on that pace that he did, defending all these takedowns, massively impressive. DDP also had 2 submission attempts and 3 minutes and 39 seconds of control time. And Israel landed 105 total strikes, so 6 more, 97 significant. He had 7 more significant, a reversal, and he was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. So DDP extends his winning streak to 10. He's an undefeated 8-0 in the UFC. Only 2 of them have come via decision. And Israel extends his losing streak to 2. He is 3-3 since 2022. Pretty wild to think about. He stays at number 2 in the rankings. And what's next? Well, if DDP is supposed to fight Sean Strickland, but what if in a world Khamzat absolutely shows a spectacular win against Robert Whittaker? Would that still be as a locked matchup? I know the UFC loves promoting Khamzat. And no one really knows what's next for Izzy, but he did say, "I'm not leaving." The famous quote, "I'm not leaving." I would love to see him fight Yuri Prochazka. He's supposedly going down. If that doesn't happen, how about the winner of the Nasruddin Imavov Brendan Allen fight? But specifically, I mean, Izzy's only going to want to take big paydays and big names at the end of his career like this. So I think the Yuri fight makes sense. What a card. Australia shows out again. Massive credit to DDP. Had a decent night in the office. Made some money. Really enjoyed the card. So much MMA action. You could have, on the weekend, all day Friday, had PFL, Grappling with ADCC and the CJI, or I guess only CJI on Friday. Saturday, all day ADCC, CJI in the afternoon, and then UFC action. Sadly, though, this weekend, we are back to the frickin' apex for UFC Fight Night Vegas 96. The prelims at 4 p.m. Pacific on ESPN+, the main card at 7 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. To preview this card, I do think the main card is a decent card. You know, you have the Ultimate Fighter finale fights, which is big for me. A lot of casuals don't know about these people. But the prelims are definitely lacking quality and quantity. I'm going to preview this card as a 4 out of 10. Some good fights that we will not break down. We have Vyacheslav Borshev taking on Contender Series alum James Yontop. We have Contender Series alum who lost his fight but somehow got a contract, Jose Medina, taking on one of the bigger favorites, Zachary Reese. We have the Danny Silva pulling out of his fight, so Dennis Bazooka will be taking Francis Marshall on short notice at a catchweight 155. And then in the Ultimate Fighter finale, we have Robert Valentine, who I think is a lot better striker, taking on grappling heavy Ryan Loder. We have the veteran Con Offley, who I think looks like the favorite, taking on a solid striker in Myron Santos, a young fighter, struggling to make weight through the Ultimate Fighter. It'll be interesting to see how his weight cut goes. And then probably more excited for the newly booked Zigomantis Ramaska and Nathan Fletcher fight. So two guys getting UFC opportunities without winning the Ultimate Fighter. Zigomantis was probably going to fight, would have fought in the semifinals against Robert Valentine, but had to pull out due to injury. So really excited to see this go down. In the prelims, we'll kick it off. We have Josie Nunez, 30 years old with a 10-2 record, taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti, 26 years old with a 6-1 record. Now, this is a fun fight where Jacqueline is only in her second UFC fight, but has looked solid. Josanne is coming off a brutal loss, but has fared well this far in the UFC. She's a brute force with some serious power in the division. Breaking this down, Josanne has a Muay Thai style. She's on a one-fight losing streak. She's 2-1 since 2022 and 3-1 in the UFC. 7 of her 10 wins are via knockout. Jacqueline is a PFL and LFA alum. She's on a 4-fight winning streak and is 1-0 in the UFC, and 3 of her 6 wins are via knockout. She has a 3-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch leg reach advantage in this fight. Now, Josanne has fared very well as long as she isn't wrestled and isn't grappled to death with her opponents trying to take her down. But Jacqueline is the longer, lengthy, solid striker, so it should make for a fun fight because both girls aren't going to be afraid to fight. And Nunez is willing to eat shots to close in distance and trying to get those power shots off. But I do think Josanne's experience will be the dividend. She's in her prime. She's coming off a tough loss. Is going to be eager to get back on the winning track. This is a very close fight, but I'm taking Josie Nunez and not putting this on any parlays. So in the prelims, we talked about some good fights. It's not very deep, so only previewing one. The Ultimate Fighter fights will be in the main card, but we'll kick it off in the main card. We have Edmund Golden Boy Shabazian, 26 years old with a 13-4 record, taking on Gerald GM3 Mearshart, 36 years old with a 36-17 record. There is a 10-year age difference in this fight. It is pretty wild to think Edmen's only 26, almost 27. He has 11 UFC fights under his belt already. And Edmen, I do think he's back on track. He's full of confidence coming off that first round knockout, while Gerald must be feeling good as well. You know, he has a win already this year, and dang near beat a pretty solid Andre Petroski last year in 2023. I do think this is a great test for Edmen. He has been known to gas. He goes out looking to get those finishes. And the longer this fight goes, GM3 is really going to make this a tough fight wherever it goes. So this should be a doozy. Breaking it down, Edmen trains out of Extreme Couture. He has a black belt in Shotokan Karate. He's a Dana White Contender Series alum. 11 of his 13 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 4 losses are via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. And he has a 3-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Gerald has a BJJ kickboxing and taekwondo style. He trains at a Killcliff FC. He has a black belt in Rofu Sport kickboxing and BJJ. He has the most submission wins in UFC middleweight division history with 10 of them things. He's tied with the great Anderson Silva for most finishes in UFC middleweight division history with 11. He has the highest finish rate in UFC history, 11 finishes, 11 wins, so 100%. And that's a minimum of 10 plus wins. He is a King of the Cage, Titan FC, and RFA alum and former champion. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He is 2-3 since 2022. 28 of his 26 wins, or 26 of his 28 wins are via submission. 8 of his 17 losses are also via submission. So to submit or be submitted. He does have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Gerald, again, very savvy veteran. He's going to be comfortable in this fight. Although Edmen is known for being aggressive and going for a knockout, Gerald hasn't got a knockout in the UFC since December of 2017, and they have all come via submission. That's part of the reason I believe Edmen is going to look to outstrike Gerald. He should have the speed and power advantage as the 10-year younger fighter. And again, the longer the fight goes, I do think it favors Gerald. He can look to weather the storm early on, wear on Edmen, get him up against the cage, look for takedowns, and find a way for a submission victory. For that reason, I am taking the golden boy, Edmen Shabazian, but I'm avoiding this on any parlays where possible. It seems kind of like a trap fight. Then moving on, we get the showcase for Michael Morales. 25 years old, undefeated with a 16-0 record, taking on Neil the Haitian Sensation Magny. 37 years old with a 29-12 record and the number 12 next to his name. So the first time Morales gets to dip in the top 15. Now, Neil is literally coming off a victory where he lasted against a very talented young striker. A heavy stud for the victory. And this fight is very much the same. The difference here is that Michael, I do believe, is more measured with his offense than what Mike Malott was. He is more powerful. I do think Neil sticks to the same game plan for wanting to clinch up, get Michael up against the cage, trying to dirty box, close distance, and avoid the power of Morales. But if he stays at range and makes it a kickboxing war, he will be in major trouble. Breaking this down, Michael is a Contender Series alum. He's undefeated on a 16-fight winning streak, 5-0 in the UFC. 11 of his 16 wins are via knockout. And Neil trains out of Elevation Fight Team. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He has the most wins in UFC welterweight division history with 22. The most fight time in UFC welterweight division history, 6 hours and 47 minutes and 19 seconds in the cage. He has the most bouts in UFC welterweight division history at 32. He's tied with Roger Huerta and Kevin Holland for most wins in a calendar year. He had 5 in 2014. He's also the only fighter in UFC history to have 5 bouts per calendar year twice. He had 14 and he was 15 in... It was in 2014 and in 15 where both he had 9 wins. He had the most decision wins in UFC history at 14. the most decision bouts in UFC welterweight history at 17. He has the most split decision wins in UFC welterweight division history with 4. He has the most significant strikes landed in a UFC welterweight division history at 1,413. He has the most total strikes landed in UFC welterweight division history, 2,525. Neil Magny, ladies and gentlemen. He's an Ultimate Fighter alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 4-3 since 2022. And he does have a 4-inch leg reach advantage. Now, this is a big opportunity for Michael to prove himself. I don't doubt him after the performance in his last fight against Jake Matthews. But Neil is still fighting at a high level. And again, if this fight gets into the 3rd round, anything is possible. But I am taking the young undefeated Michael Morales. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down. And we getting that bread. Moving on. In the co-main event, we get a strawweight showdown. Another veteran on up-and-coming fighter crime. We have Angela Overkill Hill, 39 years old with a 17-13 record and the number 9 next to her name, taking on Tabitha Baby Shark Ricci, 29 years old with a 10-2 record and the number 11 next to her name. Now, Tabitha escaped in her last fight against the veteran Tisha Torres, which was Tisha's first fight back from pregnancy with her, wife, Raquel Pennington, the current champ. But now she's getting an older veteran who is really the OG of this division. We got some OGs. We got Neil Magny. We got Angela Hill. And Angela's debatably fighting the best of her career at damn near 40 years old. And Tabitha's going to have her hands full. This will be another good test for her. I'm excited to see how it plays out. Breaking this down, Angela has a purple belt in BJJ. Two of her last four fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. She's still showing up. She's still showing out at 40. She has the most bouts in UFC women's strawweight division history with 24. The most wins in strawweight division history with 11. The most total fight time in strawweight division history, 5 hours, 42 minutes, and 45 seconds. She also has the most total fight team in all of UFC women's history, 5 hours, 57 minutes, and 45 seconds. She has the most significant strikes in strawweight division history at 1,839. The most significant strikes landed in UFC women's history as well at 1,924. I think she fought flyweight a couple times. She has the most total strikes landed in UFC women's strawweight division history at 2,151. She has the most unanimous decision wins in UFC women's strawweight division history at 8. The most decision bouts in strawweight history at 19. She is tied with Jorge Masvidal, Clay Guida, Paul Felder, Courtney Casey, and Andrea Lee for the most split decision losses in UFC history with 4. Guess you don't really want to be a part of that. Close losses. She has the most losses also in UFC women's strawweight division history at 13. She's an Invicta alum and former champion. She had one defense at title defense in Invicta. She is also an Ultimate Fighter alum. She's on a 2-fight winning streak. She's 4-2 since 2022. She has a 3.5-inch reach advantage and a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Tabitha has a black belt in BJJ and Judo. She's an LFA alum. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 4-1 since 2022. Now, Angela, at this time in her career, has honestly been relentless. She was relentless against the younger Luana Pinheiro and Denise Gomes, and I'm sure she's going to put a pace and volume on Tabitha as well, but Ricci can keep up. She has amazing cardio. She shouldn't gas out. Tisha in her fight against Tabitha had a ton of success when she was coming forward against Tabitha. I believe Angela and her team will see that. She's going to have to push the pace, and she should be able to close distance and have success. And I'm sure she will even maybe mix in some takedown attempts as well. For that reason, I'm taking the veteran as the underdog. I'm taking Overkill Hill, but I am not putting this on a parlay. This is really a coin flip fight. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was a split decision victory by one of them. Good prop to play. Then in the main event, we get the Fighting Nerds Capitan with an opportunity to show out. We have Kyle the Natural Baralho, 31 years old with a 16-1 record and the number 12 next to his name, taking on Jared the Killer Gorilla Cannonier, 40 years old with a 17-7 record and the number 5 next to his name. Now, I've been back and forth on this main event. Jared is a big step up in competition for Kyle, and he really hasn't slowed down, although he's also almost 40 years old, or is 40 years old. 5 of his last 6 fights have gone 5 rounds. He's fought a gauntlet in the division, like the best of the best. He has a ton of experience, a high IQ. He does live off striking, and Kyle, up in this run, has really been a grappling heavy fighter. That if he can get you down, he isn't a world-class striker from what we've seen thus far. I'm sure he's improving. So I'm going to have to give Jared the advantage on the feet. Jared has defeated good grapplers in his past as well. Marvin Vettori, Derek Brunson, and Kelvin Gastelum. I do think right now Kyle is better than them in the grappling and even with the striking. So you got to consider that. But breaking this down, Kyle trains out of Fighting Nerds. He has a black belt in BJJ, Muay Thai, and a brown belt in Judo. 2 of his last 3 fights have been Performance of the Night, and he's a Contender Series 2-time alum. He's on a 15-fight winning streak, 7-0 in the UFC. Jared is an orthodox fighter. He trains here in Phoenix out of the MMA lab. He has a brown belt in BJJ. He has the most significant strikes landed in the UFC middleweight bout, which was 241 significant strikes against Marvin Vettori. He's only one of 2 fighters, which was Conor McGregor, to have knockout victories in not 1, not 2, but 3 different weight classes. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 3-2 since 2022. 10 of his 17 wins are via knockout. 3 of his 7 losses are also via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. He's also rocking a 2.5-inch reach advantage. Now again, the Fighting Nerds team has been on an absolute tear and on fuego of late. But Baralho's been leading the charge. He's in his prime right now, and he's getting an opportunity to show what he's capable of. Maybe he'll try to showcase some more striking. The challenge in picking this fight is he hasn't fought a high-class striker like Jared at this point in his career. I do think Jared, he talked about, I think on the MMA Hour, that he wanted to have a quick turnaround, and he's still determined and very hungry to do things in this division. He should defend enough takedowns that as the fight wears on, he will find his openings with his striking. I think he'll get the job done via decision in this fight. Baralho hasn't had to go late in fights. He's never been finished either, and he has only had 1 finish since 2019, which was against Derek Brunson, who was quite a bit older in that time as well. For that reason, I'm giving the slight edge to the Killer Gorilla. I am taking Jared Cannonier. I think it's a close decision. I am not putting this on a parlay, but the last few fights here, we get to respect some OGs. We have some young talent, Edmund Shabazian and Michael Morales, Tabitha Ricci on display, and Kyle Baralho. But again, I'm not a lot of depth on this card. We also get the Ultimate Fighter finales, which sets us up for a week off of UFC action before another Apex event to kick off September that is pretty solid for an Apex card, deeper than this one, and it's headlined by Gilbert Burns and Sean Brady. That's episode 62. I'm rocking Wyo because Wyoming's coming next weekend to play against Arizona State in the college football opener. But again, episode 62, I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.